My wife cheated on me with her boss and stole $250, $0 from our joint account to buy a house with him. Now she's filing for divorce and claiming I'm the one wronged in this legal nightmare. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, but here I am, sitting in this cold house with my mind racing. The craziest part, it all started with something so stupid, a text message I accidentally saw on her phone. I wasn't snooping, I just reached for her phone while she was in the shower and bam, there it was. A conversation with her boss, Mark, that was way more than just professional. It was flirty, suggestive, and honestly, it made my stomach drop. I saw messages about how she wanted to see him again, how she loved the secret moments, and even plans to meet up after work for more fun. I mean, come on. She's sitting there telling him she loves him, and I'm just supposed to pretend I didn't see that. Her name's Lisa, and we've been married for 5 years. At first, everything seemed fine, normal, even good. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never suspected she'd cheat on me. She was always bitchy when stressed, but she was also charming in her own way, so I overlooked it. Still, lately, I'd noticed her coming home late more often, smelling different, spending more time on her phone. She'd brush me off when I asked about her day, and her attitude got snippy if I ever questioned her. I chalked it up to stress at work, but deep down, I knew something was off. That night, I couldn't sleep. The more I thought about those messages, the more I realized she'd been hiding something from me. I decided I needed to confront her. When she finally came out of the shower, I asked her if she was seeing someone else. Her face froze, and then she snapped at me, calling me paranoid and insecure. She said I was imagining things, that I was just jealous because she was successful and attractive. She told me I was crazy for even thinking she'd cheat and that I was overreacting, but I wasn't convinced. I had enough to suspect she was lying. The next day, I decided to dig deeper. I checked our bank accounts, and that's when I saw it, $250, zero missing from our joint account. It was transferred to some account I'd never heard of with a note saying down payment for the new house. My blood ran cold. She had been planning to buy a house with Mark behind my back. That was the icing on the cake. I knew she'd been sneaking around, but I didn't expect her to steal that much money or to do it with her boss. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she betray me like this, not just emotionally but financially too? It was like she was actively trying to ruin us. At that point, I was furious, hurt, and completely lost. I didn't sleep for days. I kept thinking about everything, the lies, the betrayal, the money she took. It wasn't just cheating anymore. It was like she'd planned her escape route and I was just a pawn in her game. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I was ready. I needed answers, truths I already suspected but wanted to hear straight from her. I had to figure out how deep this thing went and what her real plans were. That's when I realized this was no longer about just catching her cheating. It was about fighting to save what little was left of my dignity and trust. The confrontation that night was nothing short of chaos. I found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she had nothing to hide, but I knew better. I sat down across from her, my hands trembling slightly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lisa, I saw the messages, I saw the transfer. Tell me what's really going on." Her eyes flicked up at me, and for a second I thought she might lie her way out of it, but then she just smirked and rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," she sneered. "You're overreacting. It's just work stuff. Mark and I are just friends. You're making a big deal out of nothing." She looked so dismissive, so condescending that I almost wanted to punch her. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money, everything. Her face twisted into a look of mock innocence, like she was the victim here. "You're crazy," she said. "You're just jealous because I'm successful and better looking than you. Mark's just helping me with my career and you're worried about some stupid affair. Grow up." I couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. I felt like I was in some twisted nightmare. I asked her how she could do this to me, to us. She shrugged and said she deserved happiness, that I wasn't fulfilling her anymore. That's when she threw in the classic line, "You're just bitter because I'm leaving you. I've already signed the divorce papers. You're just too blind to see I've moved on." That's when I lost it. I told her she was a selfish bitch, that she'd taken everything from me, my trust, my money, my marriage. She looked at me with that same smirk, like she was enjoying this. "You're just mad because I don't want a boring life with someone like you. Mark's exciting and he's got money, you wouldn't understand." That was the moment I realized she'd planned this all along. She was going to leave with Mark with the money, with her new house. She was already living her new life in her head, and I was just some obstacle she had to get rid of. I felt a mixture of rage and despair. How could someone I loved, someone I trusted, be so cold? I wanted to punch her, scream at her, do anything to make her see how much she'd hurt me. But I just sat there, stunned, watching her lie through her teeth. It was like she had become a different person, cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see this coming. That night after she went to bed, I stayed up staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. The betrayal was overwhelming. I thought about the money she stole, the future we'd planned, and how her boss was possibly waiting for her at that very moment in some new house they'd bought with my money. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and deeply hurt. I kept replaying her words, how she called me crazy, insecure, and how she claimed she was the victim. It was all so surreal. And yet, amid all this chaos, a burning question kept gnawing at me. What the hell do I do now? Do I fight to save this marriage? Do I confront her more? Or do I just cut my losses and move on? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing: this was just the beginning. The storm was only getting started, and I was going to have to be ready for whatever came next. The next few days were a blur. I didn't sleep much, kept going over everything in my head, trying to piece together what her endgame was. I knew she was planning to leave. She'd already told her friends she was done. And I found out she'd been packing her things slowly, hiding some of her clothes in a bag. The more I looked into her phone, the more I saw how deep this betrayal went. She'd been texting Mark constantly, even during work hours, coordinating their meetings, talking about the house they were planning to buy, an expensive, fancy place that I now knew she'd been funneling money into without my knowledge. One night, I decided I needed to get proof. I set up a hidden camera in our living room, hoping I'd catch her doing something incriminating. I didn't expect her to come home that night with a suitcase, looking triumphant. When she saw the camera, she froze for a second, then smirked again. "Really? You're that desperate to catch me? Pathetic," she spat. But I didn't care about her insults. I kept recording as she sat down, pulled out her phone, and started texting Mark, telling him she'd be ready to leave in the morning. That moment, I knew she had been planning this for a while. The next morning, I decided I'd had enough of her bullshit. I confronted her with the evidence, the recordings, the bank transfer slips, the messages. Her face twisted into something ugly, and she started to lie again. "I was just talking to Mark about work," she insisted, even when I played the recordings for her. Her voice was so defiant, so full of contempt, like she thought she could just lie her way out of everything. I told her she was a lying, stealing bitch, and that I was done being played for a fool. Her response: she started crying, fake tears streaming down her face, claiming I was trying to ruin her and that I was just jealous of her success. She said, "You don't understand, I was unhappy and Mark made me feel alive again. It's not like I did it for the money, but yeah, I took some because I deserved to live comfortably." That was her big excuse, that she deserved the money, that she was entitled to a better life than what I was giving her. I couldn't believe how cold she sounded, how she just shrugged off the fact that she'd stolen from us and cheated on me. I felt a mix of rage and despair. I wanted to smash everything, scream at her, shake her until she saw the damage she'd done. But I also felt numb, like I was watching a train wreck happen in slow motion. I told her she needed to leave, that I was done with her lies, her betrayal, her manipulations. She just scoffed and said she'd already contacted a lawyer. That was when I realized she'd already set her escape plan into motion. She was trying to spin it like I was the bad guy, like I'd somehow wronged her. That night I sat alone in the dark, staring at the empty space where she used to sleep. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. I kept thinking about the money she stole, the future she destroyed, and how I was supposed to pick up the pieces of this shattered life. I couldn't help but wonder how someone I loved could turn into such a liar and thief. The pain was almost physical. I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind all along. How did I not see that she was capable of this level of deception? Now, I was left with more questions than answers. Was I going to fight for her? Was there any chance of saving what was left? Or was I just wasting my time and energy on someone who clearly didn't care about me at all? The only thing I knew for sure was that I needed to protect what was mine, my money, my dignity, my sanity. But even as I made that decision, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to lose everything I'd ever worked for. The betrayal was so complete, so brutal, I wondered if I'd ever recover from it. After she left that morning, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. The house suddenly seemed too quiet, too empty. I spent the day trying to gather my thoughts, but everything just kept circling back to the same question. What the hell do I do now? I knew she was planning to file for divorce, and honestly, I didn't blame her. She'd already made it clear she wanted out, that she was moving on with Mark, and that she saw me as some obstacle she needed to get rid of. But what I hadn't fully grasped until that moment was just how much she'd stolen from us. $250. That's not just some petty theft. That's a full-on betrayal of everything we had. I decided I needed to get some legal advice immediately. I found a lawyer who specialized in divorce and financial crimes. I told him everything about her affair, the money, her plans to leave. His eyes widened when I explained the stolen money and her attempt to buy a house with Mark. He told me I had a strong case for not only divorce, but also for recovering the stolen funds through legal channels. That was a small comfort, but it also gave me a target. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. That night, I started digging into her phone and email records more thoroughly. I found dozens of texts between her and Mark, some explicit, some just flirtatious. She'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. I also discovered she'd been secretly transferring money into accounts she'd opened under fake names, probably to hide the theft. It was clear she'd gone all in on her new life with Mark, leaving me behind, cold and betrayed. The worst part was knowing she'd lied to my face every step of the way, telling me she loved me, acting like I was the crazy one for suspecting anything. I also uncovered something that made my stomach turn. She'd already started moving her stuff out of the house, packing up her designer clothes, jewelry, and even some of the furniture. I found receipts for new furniture purchased with the stolen money, expensive, modern pieces she'd ordered to make her new house feel like a home with Mark. I felt so angry I almost couldn't breathe. How could she do this? How could she just throw away 5 years together like it was nothing? I kept thinking about all the plans we'd made, all the nights I'd come home hoping she'd be there, and now I was faced with the reality that she'd been planning her escape all along. The next step was confronting her again, but I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want her to get ahead of me or destroy evidence. I decided to set a trap. I told her I wanted to talk, to try to salvage what we could. She responded with her usual dismissiveness, acting like she was the victim, crying fake tears, claiming she was doing this for herself, and that I'd never understand her need for happiness. That was her way of spinning everything, blaming me, painting herself as the wronged party. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying, cheating, stealing, and I was done playing nice. When she finally came over that evening, I had everything ready. I had printed out her texts, bank statements, receipts, and recorded all her calls. I confronted her with everything. Her face went pale when she saw the evidence, but she quickly recovered her composure and started to yell. "You're just jealous," she spat. "You're insecure. Mark and I are meant to be. You're just too stupid to see it." She dismissed all my concerns, calling me paranoid and accusing me of trying to ruin her life. She said she was leaving for her happiness, and if I tried to stop her, she'd make sure I paid. That's when I told her she was a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. I told her I'd fight her in court, I'd get that money back, and I'd make sure everyone knew what she was really like. She laughed in my face, saying I'd never take her to court, that she'd destroy me first. But I was done with her threats. I told her to get out, to leave this house and never come back. She stormed out, screaming, crying, throwing accusations at me, trying to make me doubt myself, trying to turn the tables. But I didn't care. I knew I had the evidence and I was going to use it. I'd already contacted the bank to freeze her accounts, and I was preparing to file for divorce, to get my money back and to expose her for who she really was. That night, I sat alone in the dark again, feeling numb but somehow lighter. I had taken the first real step toward reclaiming my life. It was a long road ahead, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to fight for what was mine, my dignity, my money, my sanity. And as much as it hurt, I knew this was just the beginning of the end of her lies. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I had my lawyer working around the clock, filing for divorce and starting the process to recover the stolen money. The bank froze her accounts, but I knew she'd find a way to hide the rest of the cash. She was slick, always had been, so I kept digging. I hired a private investigator to track her movements, and what I found out was even worse than I'd expected. She'd already moved into the new house with Mark, a sleek, modern place that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. And the worst part, the house was paid for entirely with the $250, $0 she stole from us. I couldn't believe she'd gone that far. She lied, cheated, stole, and now she was living her new life with her boss, leaving me behind to pick up the shattered pieces. I'd never felt so betrayed, so humiliated. Every time I thought about her smiling face, I wanted to scream. How could she be so cold? How could she betray everything we had built? I kept replaying her words, how she said she deserved happiness, how Mark made her feel alive. She'd thrown away 5 years of marriage for a quick thrill in a fancy house. I knew I had to stay strong, but it was hard. I'd been blindsided, and now I was fighting to get my life back. I started gathering evidence for the court, more bank statements, her texts, witness testimonies from people who saw her with Mark. I also reached out to some of her friends, asking what they knew. Turns out she'd been secretly telling everyone she was finally free, that she was doing what she wanted, and that I was some jealous loser holding her back. I felt a mix of rage and despair. She'd lied to everyone, including her own family, just to cover her tracks. Meanwhile, she kept insisting she was the victim. Every phone call or message she sent me was laced with manipulation, trying to make me doubt myself. She'd say I was possessive and controlling, that I didn't understand her need for independence. That was her way of framing herself as the wronged party, like she was a victim of her own choices. But I knew better. I knew she'd planned this entire thing. I had proof of her scheming, her lies, her theft. I was determined not to let her get away with it, not to let her manipulate her way out of everything. One night, I received a startling call from a friend who worked at her company. Turns out, she'd been caught trying to transfer more money under a fake name. She was trying to clean out whatever she could before the bank caught on. That was the final nail. I knew she was desperate to cover her tracks, but I had enough evidence now to take her down legally. I also made sure to document everything, her new address, her new phone, everything. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she threw at me next. I also started to think about what I really wanted. I realized I couldn't keep living like this, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next lie. I knew I had to cut her out of my life completely. I filed for divorce, and I told her she wasn't getting a dime more than what was legally mine. I was going to fight for custody of our joint assets, and I was determined to get that money back. I'd been robbed, humiliated, and emotionally drained, but I wasn't going to let her win. I was going to rebuild my life step by step, brick by brick. In the end, I learned some harsh truths. Trust is fragile, and it can be shattered in an instant. People you think you know can turn out to be someone else entirely. The betrayal cut deep, but it also made me realize how much I valued honesty and loyalty. I've come to see that I can't control what she did, but I can control how I respond. I've started therapy to deal with the pain, and I'm slowly rebuilding my confidence. It's not easy, but I know I'll get through it. And for anyone else out there who's been betrayed like this, just remember, no matter how dark it gets, there's always a way out. You just have to be willing to fight for it. Looking back now, I realize this whole ordeal has changed me in ways I never expected. The betrayal was brutal, cutting deeper than I ever thought possible, but it forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about trust, loyalty, and myself. I used to believe in the fairy tale version of marriage, love, honesty, sticking together through thick and thin. But I've learned that sometimes people aren't who they pretend to be, and you have to be prepared to face that reality. The legal battle is still ongoing. I managed to recover some of the stolen money through court orders and by exposing her lies. It's not about the money anymore. It's about justice, about making sure she's held accountable for what she did. I've also moved out of the house she shared with Mark, and I've started over in a new place, far from the memories of her betrayal. It's been a tough road, but each day gets a little easier. One thing I've come to understand is that revenge, in this context, isn't about hurting her, though I won't deny that part of me wanted her to feel the pain she caused me. It's about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace. I want to rebuild what was broken and make sure she can't do this to anyone else. I've become more cautious, more aware of the signs of deception. I've also learned to trust myself again, to listen to that little voice that warns me when something's wrong. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, I'd say this: don't let the betrayal define you. Yes, it hurts like hell, and yes, it's unfair, but you have the power to take control of your life again. Get your evidence, seek legal help if needed, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Sometimes, the only way to move forward is to cut ties with the past completely. It's not easy, and it's going to hurt for a while, but trust that eventually, the pain will fade and you'll come out stronger. I've learned that betrayal isn't just about the other person, it's about what it reveals in us. It shows us our resilience, our capacity to forgive ourselves, and our strength to rebuild. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I'm done with the lies, the cheating, and the theft. I'm reclaiming my life, piece by piece, and I refuse to let her or anyone else take that away from me again. The trust I once had is gone, but what I've gained in its place is a hard-won understanding. That I am enough, that I can survive this, and that I will come out the other side, wiser and more cautious, but ultimately stronger.